is definitely going to be the simplest recipe of the bunch. This is a super simple one-step broccoli salad. It's kind of similar to like a Waldorf salad. So we've got about 1.5 pounds of broccoli heads that are cut into little nice bite-sized florets. We have half of a red onion. You can really use any onion, sliced thinly. One thing that I always like to do when you're going to incorporate raw onion into a recipe is give it a good soak in ice water for about 10 minutes. That will leach a lot of those sulfury, really sharp, stingy compounds out of any sort of onion product. So we've done that just to make sure that this doesn't get overpowered with onion flavor. We've got about 1/2 cup of raisins. You can use regular seedless raisins. You can use golden raisins. You can really use any dried fruit. I think dried cranberries in here might be a really good alternative, but really any dried fruit that you have. If it's much bigger than a raisin, just chop it into smaller pieces. And then we just got a little homemade dressing here. If you've ever made coleslaw, this is going to be really familiar to you. We've got some low-fat mayonnaise. We've got a little bit of apple cider vinegar. We've got just a little bit of sugar. And then I'm going to add just a pinch of salt to the salad itself. This just gets poured over everything. We're not going to pour all of it on. It's always nice to reserve a little bit so that we can adjust the consistency if we need to. And whenever we add dressing or anything that contains salt or sugar to raw vegetables like this, they're going to start to leach out some liquid, which is another reason that we don't want to add too much dressing. In fact, we really just want this barely coated with dressing because as it sits, it's going to do what's called macerate. So the salt and sugar are actually going to work their way into the interior of these vegetables. They're going to release some of their liquid. And then if we let it sit in the fridge for a couple of hours, that liquid will actually start to get reabsorbed by the vegetables. So the best way to make sure that there's enough seasoning, especially salt in here, is not to over salt it. It's to give it some time in the fridge for that salt to actually do its job and work into the vegetables. So this is really close. I'm going to add just a little bit more of this dressing, but I'm not going to use all of it. Just another tablespoon or two, just to make sure it's really thoroughly coated. Nice additions here for some extra protein would be some nuts and or seeds, toasted preferably. So like some toasted chopped walnuts, sunflower seeds, anything like that will give it a little bit more crunch, a little bit more mouthfeel, and a little bit more protein. And good fats too. And that's essentially it. So the only other ingredient in this recipe is thyme. So we're going to put this in the fridge, covered with plastic wrap. This is best if it sits for at least 2 hours, but it can easily sit overnight and will keep in the refrigerator for a couple of days. So this is a great thing to make ahead, to have ready for a gathering, or you could make it ahead for school lunch the next day if that's what you're doing.